Board of Equalization hearings. All 5 members are present, so there is a quorum, and there are 6 cases on the agenda. Before we call case 1, we just have one piece of business. Ms. Carmela Ham, who resides at 1900 North Cameron Street, has asked past the deadline for the board to consider her case due to her being out for surgery. We in the past have accepted a medical excuse for that, so I will go ahead and move to accept it. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Penaranda, all in favor? I oppose. Okay, so unanimous. So you can go ahead and schedule that. Okay, the first case on the agenda is RPC 100370009 at 1425 North Longfellow Street. Mr. Rubin, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the property has been assessed at $891,700. We disagree. My wife and I are the co-owners, and we disagree with this respectfully, and think it should be closer to $820,000 to $835,000. So I think what I'm going to do is focus on the comps that the county provided in its confirmation, and I'll say that I think that those comps strengthen our argument for a lower valuation. And then I'll take a look at the one sales comp that I provided to the board, if that works for everybody. Okay, great. So just to focus first on the county's comps. So the first one that they provided was 1825, and this might not be in order, but I'll just say that I'd focus your attention first on 1825 North Quintana. So that one sold at $845,000, and we actually think this is a pretty good comp. It is. It's certainly reasonable. It's still, I think, higher than would be warranted because the lot size of that property is more than 1,900 square feet larger than ours, and the house has an additional roughly 160 square feet above grade level. But it also only has 1 bathroom, whereas ours has 2. So I think that sort of pulls it back and makes it reasonable comp, albeit slightly larger. So I think that is certainly a reasonable comp for the board to consider. And the $845,000 sales price, I think, is much closer to the what we would say is the correct valuation for our property. The second comp the county provided was 5862 14th Street. That one sold for $850,000. And again, I think this is also a reasonable comp. The lot size is slightly larger than ours by roughly 650 square feet. There's also an additional 400 square feet above basement. So it is on the higher end of being a comp, but ultimately I think this is also a reasonable one for the board to look at. The third one the third and final sales comp that I would direct the board's attention to is 5861 15th Road North. So we do not believe this one is a comp at all. It does have the same lot size, but it has 1 additional bathroom and 320 additional square feet above basement. So one thing to keep in mind here is that the additional bathroom in and of itself increases the value pretty substantially. But the other point about that is for our property at 1425 North Longfellow, there is no bathroom on the main level of the house. And that really limits us in a number of ways, and I think is a detractor for potential home buyers. That would lower the value of this property much lower than what this one sold for. So, for example, we cannot have guests with disabilities, with mobility impairments, come to our house unless we were to install some type of lift on our stairs. And so I think those are the sorts of things that people are looking for. Having a bathroom on the main level of the house makes it a much more desirable house from the perspective of potential buyers. And the 320 additional square feet above basement is quite significant. Our house has 850 total square feet above basement. That is among the smallest single family houses in Arlington. And just to give you a sense of what it's sort of to live in 850 square feet, you have to get really creative with your space. Our kitchen is the size of a small studio apartment kitchen at best. You could look extremely hard and you will likely not find a kitchen the same size or smaller than ours in all of Arlington County in a single family. And that's what happens in an 850 square foot house. So I would for those reasons say that the 5861 15th Road North is not an actual comp. So those were the county's comps. And again, 2 of those 3 I think are perfectly reasonable. And that last one we would not consider to be a comp. Then I would just focus on the comp we provided, which is 5852 14th Road North. And that one has a slightly larger lot size by percentage and a significantly larger square foot above basement than ours. But ultimately, we think this is a reasonable comp. That one sold for $827,500, which we think is much closer to our valuation, slightly larger still, but is ultimately, I think, also a reasonable one. So in summary, I think the board has 3 reasonable comps to look at, 2 of which were provided by the county and 1 of which we provided. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say, and look forward to hearing the county's reply.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cunha for the county, please.
Good morning, board. So an interior and exterior inspection of the subject property was done with Julian Mills as a second appraiser. The department used to be sales comps, which the appellant has provided us, and 1 assessment comp. And these can be found on pages 4 and 5 of the BOE packet. 2 of the sales comps are in the direct neighborhood as a subject, and 1 is in neighborhood 501022. 2 of these comps are similar to the subject property, especially as the appellant pointed out, 103530. This is a home that sold for $931,000. It has a finished area square footage of above finished area square footage of 850. Although the quality is slightly higher, it's also a 2-story house, 2 full baths. It has a slightly larger basement, but we believe the assessment for that home at $955,800 is fair, and it sold for $845,000, whereas the appellant's home is only assessed at $891,700. So these sales can prove that the assessment for the subject is in line with market values in the area. Homes that are like the subject with a small finished square footage and floor plan don't come on the market as often. So direct comps couldn't be found to be used for this case. And in addition, neighborhood 501029 saw a 1.7% increase, which is way below the county's average. And this is due to the increase in the land values. So land only went up in the appellant's neighborhood from $755,000 to $780,000. So I provided some sales, 3 sales that were observed in the past 5 years in my BOE memo. And the subject only saw a 1.9% total change with a negative 2.6% decrease in the improvement value. This is due to the reduction in the location multiplier for the neighborhood. The appellant's opinion of value is based off of a home that sold for $827,500 in the 2025 analysis, which was also sold in as-is condition. So however, other sales for similar homes sold for more than the subject's assessment. So with data from these sales and the neighborhood analysis, it is recommended that the 2025 assessment be confirmed at $891,700. This amount can be confirmed as fair and equitable. Thank you.
Questions from board members? Mr. Hoffman.
Yeah. So comp 2 and 3 got a I-66 adjustment, it looks like. I'm just trying to figure out, and 2 looks pretty close, like right across the street. What's the line or the boundary for where properties get the adjustment versus when they don't?
So looking at comp 2, it backs directly to I-66, whereas comp 3 has a bit of a buffer. So the adjustments are a little different with those comps, but they do back into I-66.
So you have to be directly on the sound wall to get that -7 or -8%.
Yeah, somewhat, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions? No? Okay, Ms. Cunha, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
So based off of these recent land sales and other supporting market data, we do believe that the assessment is fair, and we ask the board to confirm the assessment where it is. Thank you.
Can I just reply with 1 question?
Hold on. Mr. Rubin,
Okay.
you got 1 minute to respond. You can respond or sum up this. You got 1 minute.
I will respond. Thank you. So I think that Ms. Kunje provided some inaccurate data with respect to one of the comps the county provided. So she mentioned that the address located at 5861 15th Road North had 850 finished square feet above basement. That would be the same size as ours. However, that is not the information that the county has on its property search website. So according to the information about the square footage for that property, there's more than 850 square feet. There's actually 1170 square feet above basement, which is a really important fact because that is the property that we're saying is not a comp because of the additional square footage and the additional bathroom. So it could be the case that the county's information online is inaccurate, but I just want to be clear that on the county's own website, it says that that property has 1170 square feet above basement.
Okay, thank you. All right, it's just among the board. To that last point, I had noticed that as well, that it had the identical square footage, but if you look, I mean, even with the other bathroom and square footage, I mean, building assessment is $60,000 more. That's taken into account, but so where's everybody else? Mr. Pinaranda?
Well, comfortable number 3 to be, to me, it's really not. Or it's the one that but you know, based on the assessments area, similar homes that are historical homes. I don't really see where tells me. I think probably the 1 or 2 others. Or as the assessment values, they're pretty much in line.
I'm just looking at that one comp. I just want to make sure that it's not, because you know, if it's 800 a foot sale price and this one's at 1050 a foot, that's a big enough discrepancy to make me kind of worried about it. So I'm trying to look for a listing or something that can confirm that I don't really have, other than it sounds like it's the county's property records. So just give me a minute. 850. 5861 15th Road North. Like if there's an addition or something that we could see that would add to square footage. A lot of those houses have the same initial box.
There's an ADU on that one, right?
No. Oh, yes.
Yeah,
On the sale comp?
Yeah, there's.
yeah, comp one, $42,000 ADU.
That's not right.
Oh, they put a value on it. Okay. Where do we see that?
Look at the bottom.
Oh, the asterisk. Okay, I missed that. Okay, so if you take. How do they get ADU on a 5,000 square foot lot? It must be attached.
Lower
You
level.
can't do it
Lower
detached.
level.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe that's where the value is. So, I mean, if that's 1170 for the main building, 760 a foot. I hate doing square footage on single family homes, but I don't know. Like
As a public record, it does show it. Well,
it does. Okay. Maybe it's the ADU square footage that somewhere is being recorded.
Good point.
I don't know. The other thing that just gives me pause is like money was super cheap when this property last sold in 780, 21 when mortgage rates were like 3%. So today,
It affected everybody uniformly.
yeah. So today it should be worth less, or maybe even, you know. So because the mortgage payment is going to be 30-40% higher than what it would be back then. So maybe even more. I don't know how much you borrow, so I don't know. I think I'm actually okay with the allowance number for this house. It's a tiny house.
So the others.
Yeah.
Kind of like Mr. Panorama, I don't see anywhere that I can justify lowering the value. I thought comp one was spot on, but then again with the ADU kind of throws things off. So
But it's got 42,000.
Right, it's it means the ADU, yes.
Yeah.
So, but it also does have a better quality, little bit more finished space in the basement. So again, I would probably just keep it where it is because I can't see something that I can justify lowering it.
Right,
Based
because
on-
to me, the basic math I did is the 184.4, which is the assessment on comp one. If you take off the 42,845 for the ADU, it's got the main part. Then just like with the, I got 41,955, which is account for the bathroom, certainly.
Similar age.
Right, well, if there's no further discussion, then I'm gonna need to confirm the county. 91,700. Okay.
Second,
Mr. Mendez, second, all in favor? Aye, opposed? One without Mr. Hoffman. The county is confirmed at 891,700. Thank you both. Ms. Cunha, and then do we have Ms. Buckley?
Yes,
Can you turn your camera on?
yes, I hit it, but I guess it's slow. There we go.
There. Okay, next case on the agenda is RPC 09052008 at 5216 Washington Boulevard. Ms. Buckley, you can start with your 8 minutes to tell us about the property.
Good morning. Thank you for listening to my appeal today. I have about 4 points, and I'm trying to make this like not too complicated. So I'll get a little bit through the points quickly and then go into a little bit more detail on the comps and the difference between the assessor's comps and my own. First of all, there is no real direct comparison that I could find in my neighborhood or close by, given the combination of my house, which is a smaller, older, vinyl sided house that hasn't been updated. It's on an extremely busy road with constant traffic, and I do have a new ADU. And so these factors are definitely difficult to all put together into the assessment. I understand that, but there was an 18% increase, a 20% increase in the ADU value from last year with no explanation whatsoever, and a 12% increase in the house value from last year. And that was with an attendant 3% increase in the neighborhood, which is in the assessor, Ms. Kunje's assessment. So these are two big factors that I would like to start with. Third factor is that I do live in Washington Boulevard, and I have lived here since 2013. So the traffic has gotten way worse, especially when they added the toll on 66. They use it as a cut through between Langston Boulevard and Glebe. Like, I can't get out of my driveway in the mornings. It is a huge detriment to the sales price. And I have provided what I believe is irrefutable example, which I don't know if we'll ever get again, because a builder purchased a lot that was on the corner of Washington and Roosevelt, and they built two houses. One was facing Washington, one was facing Roosevelt. And I'm going to use that as an example to show that there is more than a 10% differentiation in price, as well as an extra 8 months to sell the house on Washington Boulevard. Again, to bring into the value of my own home. And the fourth point I wanted to make was that the comps that we have used, I believe, are just completely different. None of the comps that the assessor was able to use were comparable to a house for my age and size and condition. So I believe that they're just better. They're better houses. They're on better lots. They're better condition in terms of the valuation of the primary house. So those are my main points. I would like to go into a little bit more detail on the Washington Boulevard example that I provided. This is 6404 Washington Boulevard and 1904 North Roosevelt Boulevard. You may have remembered that house. It was this beautiful old Victorian on a really large lot. I know they tried to sell it. I went and looked at it when it was for sale, and they were trying to keep the integrity of it. Like the mayor, I believe, of Falls Church or Arlington lived there at one point. It was a cool house, but it was a really big lot. So a developer bought it, bulldozed the house, sadly, and like put it in a triangle, 2 triangle lots, which is unusual. But I just wanted to say that they then put up the first house on Washington Boulevard, they listed it for sale for $1.8 million in February of 2024. It took 8 months for that house to close. It closed in October of 2024, and the price went down $125,000 from the asking price for $1.675 million. The house that was facing Roosevelt, it was put on the market for $1.9 million, and it sold, it went under contract in 2 days, and it sold in March for $1.875 million. So that is exactly $200,000 between the two selling prices of the exact same house. It is literally exact. Every single aspect of it is exact. I think one of the lots is slightly tiny bit bigger, and that was the Washington Boulevard lot, actually. But essentially, it was 90 square feet bigger. Exact same house. And so that I said 12%, excuse me, it's like 11.3 when I used like a computer calculator to make sure I got the difference correct. So I did not understand in the Ms. Kunje's rebuttal where she talked about a 5% difference. It is literally 12% almost. And also it took almost 8 months to sell that house. And to go under contract, it took many months. So it's a very interesting, I believe, and concrete example to show that living on Washington Boulevard does have a big impact on your sales price. Then I also, I don't know if you need me to go through the comps, but I found comps for smaller houses that were of kind of the age of mine. Mine house was built in 1935, and nothing has been, there's some interior upgrades, but that's it. And then they were all very close on a map, like maybe 4 to 5 blocks. So they might not be in the exact neighborhood number, because I don't even know how to do that on the computer, but they are all comparable in terms of the house, the main house. Again, the ADU is a separate topic. And all of those I've adjusted slightly down because of the fact that none of them were on Washington Boulevard. They were all in much better, like interior neighborhood locations. And then there are 4 comps provided by the Ms. Kunje, and I've provided a little bit of feedback on all of them. Unfortunately, none of them have the value, like the condition of my home. I believe they're all in the good category, although one might have been out. Sorry, I'm just trying to double check and make sure I have that. One was an average plus, but the others were good. So they were higher value. Almost all of them had, like one of them had a 12,000 square foot lot compared to mine. And one had an 8,600 square foot lot. One had a 7,340 square foot lot. So these are like a lot bigger lots. And also I would like to point out that the sales price of numerous of these was lower than the county assessment for the year prior. So I believe these are also points to show that they were overassessed, but even at that, they're much different houses than mine. Now, the last point was just to circle back in the fact that there was such a large increase in the valuation of my main house between 2024 and 2025. It was 162 last year, and now they're saying 181, which is a 12% increase. If you look at the history of the valuation of the main house, it has gone down sometimes because of the fact that houses do depreciate, especially old houses like my own. So it's kind of like getting on that tear down territory. Now the ADU value, this is just inexplicable, and I got no explanation when I talked to Ms. Kunje on the phone. Last year the valuation was $241,000, and this year it's at $295,000, which is a 20% increase. So those are my primary points. I'm happy to circle back on anything if I didn't make it clear, but I would like to request that you please put these things into context. Again, there isn't a great comparable, so we're having to like pull between other main houses and then the ADU. I just have no idea why it's valued so significantly different between last year and this year. And that's really what pushed my valuation way up into the fact that I know I couldn't sell it for 1.249 million. It's like crazy. I have a small, tiny house. So that is where I would like to end for now.
Okay, thank you. Ms.
Thank you.
Cunha for the county, please.
All right, good morning, board. So an exterior inspection was conducted with Noah Zamba. An interior inspection was not conducted, but I was able to verify with the homeowner on the phone that no updates were done to the property after the 2024 interior inspection. The property has two improvements, an older main house and an ADU. These properties are both assessed separately, with the older home having a lower quality and older effective age and year built. The ADU was built recently with a higher quality and effective age. The main house is being assessed fairly and is equalized with other older homes, whereas the ADU is assessed with other newer built homes in the appellant's direct neighborhood. The department used 4 comps in the subject's direct neighborhood to support its assessment. These are older homes that sold during the analysis period. There weren't any homes with ADUs that sold in the subject's direct neighborhood, so the comparables used were mainly for the main home. Last year, the department conducted a busy road study that showed that homes that are north of I-66 and on Washington Boulevard only needed a negative 5% adjustment. This can be proven with the sale that the homeowner included in the appeal from Washington Boulevard. The home was on the market for 4 months. It was listed in June and it sold in October. And it only sold for for 4.2% less than the listing, which further confirms the department's decision of only applying a negative 5% adjustment on homes north of I-36 that are on Washington Boulevard. So before the 2024 busy road study, all homes in Washington Boulevard were getting a negative 10% adjustment. But homes north of I-66 only saw a negative 5% adjustment after the busy road study, which is why the subject and any other homes on north of I-66 that are on Washington Boulevard are only getting that adjustment. Both the main house and the ADU received this adjustment. And additionally, without adding the value of the ADU, the valuation for just the main house and the land would be at $954,600. So based off of this data and the busy road study and the neighborhood analysis, we recommend that the 2025 assessment be confirmed at $1,249,700. This amount can be confirmed as fair and equitable. Thank you.
Thank you both. Questions from board members? Mr. Yates.
To the county, what was the reasoning for the large bump on the ADU?
So the ADU was built in 2023, so it's being assessed with other new construction homes that were built in 2023, and they all have a quality assignment of IV minus. The main house has a quality assignment of average plus, so the difference is very big between the qualities. That's why the ADU is assessed at that much.
But the bump in the ADU, not the difference between the main house.
Pardon?
What the reasoning for the bump in the ADU this year, irrespective of the main house?
So it's the same. Well, last year was the ADU was also receiving the negative 10% adjustment, and now it's only receiving the negative 5% adjustment. So we kind of gave the ADU and the main house, well, the ADU the 5% back, and also when the location multipliers when the neighborhood went up, the ADU value also went up because of that location multiplier. So everything that was applied to the main house has also been applied to the ADU.
So the bump with the land, that's, yeah. But so the bump or the 5% for on the land is reflected in the ADU price itself.
Right. And
Yeah.
Ms. Buckley, when did you get the CO on the ADU?
I believe it was 2022, but just to reiterate my point, it was 241 last year. It's
Okay, all right, excuse me. Answer the question.
Oh, sorry.
A minute to wrap up later. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Mendez.
Yes, for the county. Just to be clear, the 5% began this year or did it begin last year?
This year.
This year, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yeah, Nicole, can you just kind of like talk about the ADU? Is this new construction? Is this like an older garage that got renovated? Is it a fully functional, rental property with a kitchen? Or, I mean, right? Like, or is it just like a bedroom above a garage? Just give us a little color on it, because $295 is a significant chunk of change.
Yeah, it is a separate unit. It is connected into my house with all the utilities. So like we have this symbiotic relationship, but it is separated, and it is 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. Of course, it's under the 750 max. But it's quite nice. I mean, I like it. I think it's really cool. It can be used as a rental. And I'm renting it right now, but I hadn't been for the last few years. And yeah, it's nice and it's separate. But
Okay.
again, that's
It
a
was
50
new construction or was it like
Yes.
an existing garage? Okay, all right.
No. It was not like, yeah, no, the garage is still existing. There's still a garage,
Okay.
an external garage, sorry.
Can I ask how much you're getting in rent?
Sure. It depends on the month. I was getting $29.95. It's fully furnished, so that's why it's higher. And now I'm getting $32.95.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Cunha, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
So we believe that the home is equalized with the other homes in the direct and adjacent neighborhood, and that the value should remain the same.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Buckley, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Sure, thank you. So again, there was a 54,000 increase in the ADU, which is a 20% increase. And I used a calculator to make sure I got that right, with no explanation whatsoever between last year and this year, even with this 5% going back on the Washington Boulevard issue, which I hope that my example that I gave you of the 2 sales for a house that is identical and it's just one's on Washington, one's around the corner. And that was an 11.3% difference. And that did happen this year. I don't know what the county is trying to do with that kabuki math, but the difference in sale price between the 2 homes that are exactly the same is $200,000. It took 8 months. It went up for sale 5 February, so not 4 months that they're saying, and it sold 9 October. And so that is a 11.3% difference. So I do think that is still valid. And I would hope that you would look at that example. If a study was done, but then we're having the market show this is the
All right.
sales.
Thank you. Minute has expired. Okay.
Sorry.
It's just among the board now. Ms. Yates?
I'm looking at the bumps. The area went up 3.1%. That's part of the logic in saying that why the ADU went up so much. 3.1% is not that bump. And even with additional 5% less for the land underneath that ADU, I don't see how the price went that high.
You know, if it was.
Yeah, but if the area went up 3%, that was her logic in saying why the ADU.
No, I understand that, but we see all the time where neighborhood goes up a certain amount, but then we find out one house.
On the house went up 12%. That's for no changes. The area went up 3%.
We don't know if there's changes. Right.
Yeah, the rent seems substantial that they're commanding. I wish I had asked the county how they value the ADU exactly, because let's just say she nets $2,000 a month, and then you slap like a 6% cap rate on it. That's like $400,000, and they're only assessed at $295. Again, I don't know if that's in line with the county's methodology, but
Right, that's at 2,000. She's getting 32.
you're right. So I tried to give her,
Oh, yeah.
6% cap rate plus, netting $2,000 a month.
Yeah, no.
So I think with that, I mean, 2-bed, 2-bath is a large ADU. So I can sort of see why it's plus the removal of the 5% year over year. I think that definitely adds to it. So with all that considered, I think I would stay with the county's assessment.
I think the fact, like you said, in the ADU is maybe there's for this year. I want to do the weekly progress assessment at 1,249,750.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mendez, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. The county is going to 1,249,700. Thank you both.
Thank you.
We have Ms. or Julian Mills. Ms. Simpson.
Good morning.
Okay, good morning. Third case on the agenda is RPC 130690008, 4742 First Street North. Ms. Simpson, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property.
Okay, my name is Laura Simpson. I'm the owner of 4742 First Street North. I'm a single mother employed by the Arlington County government. I appear to appeal the 2025 real estate valuation of this property because the assessment is not uniform in its application as prescribed by the county. The increase in assessed valuation from the time I purchased the home in 2021 to 25 grossly exceeds the increased valuation for other comparable homes on my street. My home is located in Arlington Forest, a community of housing developed in the early 1940s, each with virtually identical floor plans and construction. In a continuous row along my street, there are 8 houses comparable to mine. A photograph would show you virtually identical brick structures. 3 of these houses have modest additions. Mine has a modest-sized room added in the 1940s, 8 decades ago. 2 have detached garages, and I have not made any modifications since purchasing the house. And when I did purchase the home in 2021, the assessed real estate improvement value for my house was assessed at $96 per square foot. And this assessed $96 valuation was in the middle of values for the 8 adjacent comparable homes on my street, which range from 72 to 118 per square foot. By 2025, the assessed value for my house has skyrocketed to 147 per square foot, an increase that far exceeds the assessed values for all these other comparable homes. For the other comparable houses in 2025, the range of assessed value is $69 to $125 per square foot, compared to my 147 per square foot. To be clear, the assessed value for my house increased 54% from 2021 to 2025. For the 8 other comparable houses on my street, the increases from 2021 to 2025 were as follows. 5 of the houses increased only 3% or less. 1 house increased 6%. 1 house increased 15%, and 1 house actually decreased. None of these nearly identical comparable houses were included in the comparisons to my house presented by the county assessors. I've made no marketable improvements to my house during this period. My house is fundamentally no different from my neighbors. There's no justification for increase in my assessed value by 54% and no justification for singling out my house. In 2021, my assessed value was in the mid-range of these comparable homes. To be uniform in application, it should remain in the mid-range. Any increase for my house beyond the mid-range for the comparable houses on my street is unfair and discriminatory. Thank you for your consideration of my appeal.
Thank you. Mr. Mills for the county, please.
Good morning, board. Today we're looking at subject property 4742 First Street North. An interior and exterior inspection was completed March the 7th, which confirmed an effective age of 1985 and a quality rating of good. Upon the inspection of the exterior, the material was updated from frame to brick, which resulted in a revised assessment of $932,400. This property is similar to other older homes with modest additions or renovations. The quality and effective age are justified by the comparable properties seen on page 4. 148 North Park Drive, 102 North Abington Street, as well as 4700 2nd Street North. The subject's property neighborhood 504062 had an average value increase of 2.3% due to recent sales in the area, and the subject property increased 4% from 2024 to 2025, which is in line with similar two-story older homes that have renovations. Because several nearby properties appeared underassessed or not equalized, the department responded with a full neighborhood walk. In response to the walk, 8 property records were updated, which include updates to features, quality, as well as effective ages. The before and after value sheet was included in the package on page 6. Just one note that the total change for 3 properties on page 6 were highlighted incidentally, and they do not have any implications. In conclusion, the department confirms the revised assessment at 932,400 as fair and equitable, following the inspection as well as the neighborhood adjustments. Thank you.
Thank you both. Questions from board members? Mr. Mendez.
Yeah, for the county, comparing the subject property with comp 2, I see the effective age, same year, they were built the same year, but the effective age is 2005 on the comp, but the condition / quality is average plus. Are those two separate things? Because on the subject property, the condition is good, but it's got a lower effective age. So I don't quite understand that, or how those two may or may not be related.
Sure. I believe the comparable 2 does not have a small addition. The other properties do have a small addition, which is the difference between the quality difference.
So does it have anything to do with like the interior, like the finishes in the kitchen or the bathrooms?
For the most part, all the interior will be justified within the effective age.
Okay.
So you want comp 2 or comp 1?
Comp 2. Comp 2, it's effective age 2005, but it's average. Yeah.
Jobman?
Yeah, it looks like there's some siding on the house, like on the upper level, all around. Are you looking at this as it's 100% brick or like some percentage?
No,
Brick.
some percentage is brick and some percentage is siding.
Okay.
Mr. Mills, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Sure, yes. In response to the homeowner's concerns that our home was not assessed equitably with similar properties on the block, I do want to note, and she said earlier, that the sale in 2021 did trigger an inspection in which the interior property was reviewed. The neighborhood walk adjustments were made based on exterior findings because we do not have access to the interior for those properties. So in conclusion, we believe that the assessment should be confirmed at 932,400. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Simpson, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yeah, I would say in terms of my house compared to the other houses, the small addition on the back was done in the 1940s. It still has all the original windows. My house may, from an aesthetic, as you walk through it, appear to have had some renovation work in the kitchen, but it's more like putting a blanket on a broken piece of furniture, because in the years since I've owned the house, I have discovered that all the wiring is still the original fabric wrapped wiring. The plumbing, the bathrooms, the fixtures are all the original fixtures. I'm dealing with broken or almost broken pipes in some locations in the house because they are the original pipes per a plumber that inspected it recently when I opened up some of the ceilings and walls. So, if the suggestion is that my house has some newer effective age to it from the houses adjacent to me, I would argue that's not quite accurate. But
Okay.
in either case, I think that my house increase has not been uniformly applied, and it seems pretty unfair.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Okay, it's just among the board. It's got a 40-year-old effective age on it. Pardon me?
Or worse. Yeah.
This is one of those ones where you look at the map and you're like, why is her argument is very like logical, right? Why is this one sticking out at, $100,000 higher than all the identical neighboring properties? There's definitely an equalization issue. The question then for us is like, should all the other ones come up or should she come down?
I think it's the addition, because just looking on Google Maps, it doesn't look like the other neighbors have additions too. So that's the only thing I
A
think.
little more square footage.
But it's very
Not
minimal.
that much more
It seems like a huge jump too.
for 100,000.
Yeah.
Ladies addition, yeah.
I think this house has been assessed historically higher than the other ones. I was looking at 3 other homes, not the whole.
I didn't look at that. And so it's been running higher.
Have on the increments of the other houses, it's been pretty much steady. Except that this house, yeah, says 2023 for 80 compared to other homes that were assessed at 848, 830.
So about 55,000.
So the only thing that happened different to this house is it actually sold. It has been run. I mean, I'll throw out an idea. I'd be open to even going down closer to the appellant's number, but maybe to 2024. To try to let the others catch up. But it seems like they should all be in a range that's very close. I'm very uncomfortable with this being, $60,000 higher than the neighboring property would say identical.
Yeah, what I did is I took the land value that's equalized, went back to the 2024 building, which brings it down to 911,500. Because it does seem like, yeah, it's got an addition, but it's not like a 600 square foot addition.
Yeah.
It's pretty small.
It looks like there's an upper level too on the addition, like maybe like some kind of
Siding is.
yeah, in the back. Let's see.
No, not on my house.
Excuse
There's
me.
no upper level. It's
It's
just
just
a
among the
roof.
board. You can talk, Ms. Simpson. Thank you.
Oh, my apologies.
Not enough for storage.
Okay, yeah.
It's just a
Oh, and then it's just looking at a Google Maps photo. I would be in line with what Greg said, going back to 2024. I just think it's far ahead of the neighbors, despite its small addition from the 40s. I even tried to apply the average, and it came up to 917. But the neighborhood went up 2.3% on average. It's still 917 seems a little high to me. So again, I think 2024
I came up with 917.
What's that, Mark?
That's what I hit, was 917.
If you look at the whole block, it's.
Okay, where are you?
I can go with Greg's suggestion. I looked at 917 also.
What's gonna happen is the department's then gonna go and look at everything on the block next year and try to equalize it, so this at least gets her down for a year closer to where everybody else is. So I'd motion to reduce to the 2024 land and improvements value at 896,500. I would actually suggest to keep the land even and then just make the adjustment on the improvements.
Second.
Linda, all in favor? It's unanimous. The assessments reduced back to the 2024 assessment of 896,500, with leaving the land at the 719,300, reducing the building by whatever that math comes out to. Thank you both. We have Mr. Pataluna. Shaw Dipple.
This one's a good one.
Shaw. Dipple on, no? All right, then with the absence of the appellant, we'll move to the next, Gregory and Sarah John. Leon,
Hello, I'm here.
I don't know who's the I.
Pardon? Greg, John here.
John Gregory, okay. Okay, different, okay. All right, so the next case we'll hear is RPC 03003170 at 4110 40th Place North. Mr. River, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about your property, sir.
Yes, so I submitted slides. Am I permitted to share them? I think it's easier to visually go through stuff.
I'm sorry?
I submitted slides. They're in the packet. Am I able to share them? Is that permissible?
Yeah, you can share your screen. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we live at 4110 40th Place North. And so we feel, it's neither fair nor equitable, the assessment. The last couple of years, they've aggressively increased the valuations of the home. So we purchased this 4.5 years ago for 1.467. And after, talking with the assessor, they did slightly lower the assessment of that. But it seems like the last several years, they've been kind of clawing that back and kind of moving it up. And so the current assessment at a 2,640,000 or 64,500 is nearly 600,000 more than what we paid for it just 4.5 years ago, and over a 40% increase, which is out of line with all the other properties that have kind of turned over in our neighborhood, giving kind of like what the actual value of those homes were. Additionally, I pulled some other comps of recent sales in kind of the northern Virginia or the northern Arlington area, and those kind of also show they're more in line with our assessment of the value of our home. I think the issue is that there's a lot of just amenities that are not captured by the systematic way they try to value homes, which I sympathize with. It's very difficult to value tens of thousands of homes. But I want to kind of walk through our logic and our reasoning and why we think this is a very large overassessment for our property. So, when we purchased our home, 4 other houses in our just within a couple of block or within less than a block, just in the same cul-de-sac, really all turned over at the same time. Our home had been on the market for over a year, helping kind of get the maximum price available. They looked at their assessment and said, "Oh, I'll get something a little over that," and then they were not able to do that. They lowered the price. No one wanted to pay 1.5 million for that. They lowered it again, and then we paid below what they had lowered it again up at. And that, as I said, within a couple of weeks, there were multiple homes selling, and so it's not like there was no demand. All these other people were shopping for homes. Interest rates were great in 2000, and people chose different homes. People paid more money, and so I feel like I'm very happy with our home, but it's not like we got a $600,000 deal on this home. Joel was trying to maximize what he could get, and he spent a year trying to do that. And so that's what we were able to get it for. As you kind of look at kind of the assessment history, that's where, it had been assessed really high, and that's just not what it is worth when you actually consider what people were looking for and how people think about the disamenities and what they're willing to compromise on and how they're focusing on the different features of the house that may not be captured in square footage or other aspects of the system used to value. And so after meeting with the assessor, they, did lower the assessment for a year and then had slow increases. But the last 2 years, we've seen really aggressive value increases that seem out of line to us with the true value of the home. And so, like I said, I just want to sympathize. It's really, really hard to do it in a systematic way. And it's really hard to find, great comps where there's so many unique situations. And I have a slide talking about kind of a lot of the disamenities that we're facing. If you go to kind of the comps, and so these are some of the other homes in North Arlington that we feel were similar and are more in the price and range of what we believe our house assessment should be. And then, so like I said, like literally our next door neighbor bought the house a week after us. Down the street, another sold, and then around the corner, another sold, back all within like 3 weeks of each other. And everyone else chose different homes, paid more money. And what we've seen since then is more modest increases in those homes over that time period versus ours. And so I feel like ours has just been slowly creeping up to equalize and get it back to where they had previously over assessed. And what I think the system really fails to do is like we are on a really steep hill. It's a big disamenity. We have no backyard to like kick a ball around. There's no grass. There's a bunch of trees and a bunch of leaves and really unusable. Half of the yard is like fenced off and steep. And it all backs up to Glebe, where you just have a row of cars every morning sitting in traffic trying to get to Shane Bridge. We're at the back of the cul-de-sac. Any trash that a raccoon gets out, like everything is just blown back. Like we're back of like a wind tunnel. A fair number of things just not been updated in the house. We're in a 30-year-old home, and I think at this part of the market, people want perfection or want like. But my wife and I were very willing to accept like we want good schools and we want a good commute, and these other things are not a bother for us, and so we'll take that on, and I think that just isn't getting captured in the assessment structure. And so we respectfully ask to reduce the assessed value. It's just not in line with comparable sales. It doesn't make sense with kind of the neighboring property relative values. We think, a 25% increase since we purchased is a lot more in line with kind of how the market has gone. And we think a 1.83 million is more realistic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Pataluna for the county, please.
Yeah, good morning. So an interior inspection and exterior inspection was performed on February 14th. The subject's property neighborhood changed on average of 8.77% due to the sales. After the interior and exterior inspection, the home's quality and effective age were verified as correct, and no changes were made in that regard. The appellant's property had an 8.8% increase, which is in line with similar properties in the neighborhood. Appellants may concern about themselves and neighbors moving in at the same time and having different increases over the years is based on a 5-year span and not a year over year, which is how the neighborhoods are appraised. The appellant's 40% increase is the difference between their 2020 sale price and the 2025 assessment, and not from 2024 to 2025. Provided in the comp sheet on page 5, there are 3 sales that are good indicators of market value and are geographically closer to the subject than some of the sales provided by the appellant. 2 assessment comparables on page 6 are also provided to demonstrate equalization. The sales demonstrate that an assessment value is fair and equitable. We recommend that the 2025 assessment be confirmed at $2,064,500. This amount could be considered as fair and equitable.
Okay, thank you both. Questions from board members? Any final comments, Mr. Pataluna?
Yeah, so again, the average increase was 8.7% for the appellant's neighborhood. The appellant increased 8.8, which puts them in line. Again, therefore, we recommend that the 2025 assessment be confirmed at $2,064,500.
Thank you. Mr. Gregory, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yeah, so and I think as Mr. Pataluna had mentioned, that's not how their system works, and they only are looking at these year over year things. But I think if you kind of look at the time span and look at kind of what's fair, what's equitable, it is out of line with kind of what the market is. I'd love when we sell our house for these valuations to be true, but I just don't believe that is true. And I think that's what this Board of Appeals is for, is when, this systematic approach will fail on the edges. Like Zillow does not get it right. Redfin does not get it right 70% of the time, let alone 100% of the time. And I think that's what this appeal is for, and that's what we're asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's just among the board.
So you got a pretty good buy in 2020. I mean, I see that. And it looks like a $2 million house.
No, I mean, then the sales supported, I know.
Yeah.
All the neighbors are pretty close or higher.
Right.
I think there's a $3 million house next to it too, close by.
Discussion then, from the county at 2,064,500. Do I have a second? Mr. Gates, all in favor? Aye. Unanimous, the county's confirmed at 2,064,500. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Mr. Shaw on? Or Roman Jankowski? No. Okay, Mr. Petaluma, if we're gonna hold and see, is, are the Friedmans on? Okay, all right, then, Mr. Petaluma, if you don't mind, we're gonna go ahead and hear the sixth case on the agenda, because the appellant's here, that way they can get back to work or life or whatever
Of course.
they need to, so, okay. All right, then we're gonna look at case 6 on the agenda, which is RPC 0207011 at 2919 North Greencastle Street. Mr. Friedman, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about your property, sir.
Thank you very much. So when I opened up my 2025 tax assessment in January, I was living in a rental house in Arlington while my home was being renovated. And I noticed that the assessment included an increase in the building portion. And I said to myself, wow, I'm not even living here this year. My house at this point does not have a roof on it, and I'm paying rent elsewhere. And that didn't make much sense to me. So I called Mr. King, and I do want to give the county credit for discussing the situation for me and explaining the process. I understand the idea of comparables, etc. Mr. King took time to discuss it with me and also sent somebody out to photograph the property to show that the roof was off the house at this point. And when he came to survey the property in February, he asked me to come out and discuss it. He also told me about the EOB process. So I consider this a very fair process that you provide. I wanted to say that. My biggest concern is that while the staff did agree to reduce the building portion from the 2025 level, which included that increase, they only reduced it by $40,000. And that only represents a 15% reduction in the building value. And to be honest with you, I would think that the reduction should be far greater for a house that I cannot live in for most of the year. I don't really understand why over $200,000 building piece is included when it's essentially an unlivable house, given the renovation that's being provided. I also want to point out that the letter indicating that the county had reduced my building portion by $40,000 included a comparable assessment for surrounding properties. And one of those properties was actually next door to my house at 2029 North Greencastle Street with the sale price, I think, of $1,050,000. However, that property, even though that it's got a similar value, that property was raised 2 months ago to build a new house, which is going to be listed at, I think, $2.925 million in November. So technically for several months, that building value should also be closer to zero than the listed building value. So I feel that given that the house cannot be inhabited through most of 2025, I request that the building assessed value be placed closer to zero than at that over $200,000 assessed value. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. King for the county, please.
Sure. Good morning, board. This is a unique review case for us, being a property undergoing a total renovation and requesting a revision. We did photograph the property on January 29th when the roof was removed. We then did a full inspection of the site on February 27th for the review case and noted that it was undergoing the renovation and addition work. The house was gutted. They did add, the second story that they're working on, but it was unlivable at that time. The property is undergoing a full and major renovation and expansion. At any time during the year, we have over 1,000 open permits for renovations in the county. The department does not update assessments to reflect ongoing work or prorate those valuations for demolition or removal of other features or the unlivability of a property during renovation throughout the year. Mr. Freeman brought up 2929 Greencastle. That property was not raised before January 1st, so that value does carry over into 2025. We did try to analyze the value of the property as it would have been on January 1st as a livable house within the neighborhood. I used this section of the renovation plans that showed the existing status of the house to correct some of that interior information and measurements as shown in the package. And these are the changes that did reduce the assessment by about $40,000. The comps provided by the department are all within close proximity to the subject and show similar properties, especially the first three. They sold as is or in need of renovation or as land sales without doing an interior inspection of the property as it previously was. These houses that sold in need of renovations are probably good comparables as a lower bound for valuation on the subject property. So with those changes made to the record of the subject property and the comparables provided, and keeping in mind equalization and that we don't adjust any of the other hundreds of properties undergoing renovation in the county, we recommend that the board confirm the revised 2025 value of $1,101,600. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Questions from board members? No? Okay, any final comments, Mr. King?
Sure. Again, we don't make changes to properties undergoing permit work. The department worked hard to revise the value to a property number for the property as it would have been on January 1st. And the comps do show a strong market even for properties that need to undergo renovation in the area. And we again request a confirmation of the revised value of $1,101,600. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Friedman, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Sure, I will just close with one question, which is we're going to complete this renovation by the end of the year. I'm going to see a much higher assessment next year. I understand that. I get that. But why should the building portion raise so significantly? And yet when I'm going through a complete renovation and not in the house, why are we only decreasing it by 15% in order to reflect what is essentially an unlivable house through most of the year?
Okay, thank you both. All right, it's just among the board members.
I mean, it's consistent with what we've seen. The county doesn't assess the completed building until it's completed, but they don't take it to zero while it's under construction. So, I mean, I look at the improvement value. I mean, it looks like a pop top type of situation. So it's like you've got a brick base, you've got a base, and the value is only like a little bit over $200,000. It's like with utilities, everything in place. I mean, it's like we just had an ADU that was worth $295,000. So I think if anything, it's probably underassessed.
But it's how they do it.
Yeah.
There is
I've been through it.
utilities, yeah.
Couple
This is
times.
how it happens. So,
You get a year where the value's a little bit out of whack, and it stabilizes.
I would just like to make a point. In commercial, we kind of do this, don't we? Like we value the site plan, but that's on the potential of the property, the 240 units that are incoming. If we did this with this particular property, it would be even higher. Like if we applied that same methodology, of course, it's not the same thing because someone could just come in and buy it for $900K and take
They may
over the
not finish
project,
the
etc. Yeah, so it's different, but if we wanted to look at it that way, it would be even higher. So.
you want to make a motion?
I'm motion to confirm the county's reduced assessment at $1,101,600.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. County's reduced assessment of $1,101,600 has been confirmed. Thank you both. Okay, we have Mr. Cataluna again. I'm not sure if Dimple Shaw has shown up or not.
Don't think so.
No, for Roman Jankowski. Okay, then we'll hear the case without them. Last case then on the agenda is item 4, RPC 03006009 at 4200 40th Street North. Mr. Cataluna for the county, please.
All right, thank you. Good morning again. And an exterior inspection was performed on February 7th. The Appellant's neighborhood increased on average of 3.6% due to the sales. The appellant purchased the home December 3rd and is considered a late sale, but was still reviewed. After review of the 2025 analysis, the sale of the subject appears to be an outlier due to its assessment to sales ratio of 126% compared to the sales and the analysis averaging at 98.7%. No comparables were submitted by the appellant. Comparables listed in the packet are from appellant's neighborhood 503008. At the start of the analysis, there were 11 sales total and 5 ballot sales. The 5 ballot sales had an average ASR of 98.7 compared to the appellant's December sale at 126%. Comparable sales on pages 5 and 6 are all IB or IB plus quality with comparable lot sizes and finished square footage. The department used 4 sales comps that are shown on pages 5 and 6 to show that the appellant's assessment is fair and equitable. Final note, I was unable to get in touch with seller's agent, but spoke with the buyer's agent via phone. Agent confirmed that the previous owner had relocated in previous years and was selling as a relocation sale. The assessment has been revised in the 2025 assessment to $2,766,900. This value can be confirmed as fair and equitable.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just one. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Hoffman.
What does a relocation sale mean? Not familiar with that term.
Yeah, so what happened, so talking to the agent, the previous homeowner got a job somewhere else and they moved and they were trying to sell the house from there. So pretty much they got talking to the agent, the previous homeowner got another job, I think he said in California or something like that. And so he was trying to go and sell as quickly as possible, pretty much. And so typically they do go through a different party, but don't believe it did this time. But yeah, so previous owner moved, and so he had to sell the house.
Yeah.
It's not arm's length.
Okay, got it.
Okay, Mr. Mendez.
So, to your point, Mark, does the county consider this an arm's length transaction then, or?
So yes. So how we saw this was it didn't actually go through a third party itself. Again, talking to the real estate the buyer's agent, what he made it sound like was the previous homeowner was selling the house as a relocation because he relocated, but decided not to go through the company's relocation process. So it never actually went through a third party itself. It did go straight from the old buyer, well, the old seller to the new buyer.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Petal, or I'm sorry, Mr. Petaluma, if you take a minute to wrap up.
Yeah, so just want to note that the previous sale in 2022 for this home was $2.5 million. And based on the sales and comps that are provided, we recommend the board confirms the revised assessment value to $2,766,900.
Okay, thank you. All right, it's just among the board, just to end up on that relocation. So also what happens in it, you sign an agreement with your employer. So either one of two cases happen. If they go and get 2 appraisals of the property and you get the lower value, 3 and they take the average.
Okay.
So that's the deal, and that's
So
that.
they're kind of paying to help you move.
Right, but you're not necessarily getting
Yeah.
bumps or, if it got into a competitive situation or something like that.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like, here's your money, here's what we could do, but it sounds like he didn't go through with that because I'm assuming they figured on the open market there was tension, so, or whatever, but that's what the relocation generally is.
Well, one of them, lawyers are, but it's just, they don't get.
You get a package.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's Mark got
Not
that.
necessarily the highest thing, so.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't have a problem based on the case, and like I said, I
A
don't.
good
feel
price.
The burden of proof is on the appellant, I don't really. think the revised assessment.
Can I just point out one thing? This property has a big set of stairs heading up to the front. I think I remember showing this at one point, and the it's just a lot of stairs, and compared to all the other sales, I mean, I know it's kind of a nitpicky thing, but at this price point, there's like 4 landings until you get to the door. So I think that has a lot to do with why it sat on the market. It was on the market for 50 days. They tried it at 2.5. Again, I showed this in 2023. It's kind of one of those houses that keeps going back on the market.
$400,000 or $500,000 difference because of the stairs.
That's what I could point to, that maybe could be something that a buyer in this price range might look at and be like, I don't know if I want to pay $2 million and carry my groceries up that far.
Still got a nice 2-car garage and a
Right,
driveway.
Yeah. But that's the only thing I could point to that maybe would make this property somewhat of an outlier.
I think it's good.
Accept the county's revised number of 2 million. Second. Hoffman. All in favor? Aye, opposed. 4 to 1, Mr. Mendez. County's revised number of 2,766,900 has been confirmed. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
that completes the agenda. Does anybody have anything else? Just one small announcement, just to mark your calendars. Wednesday, June 4th, there's no hearing, so keep the day off.
With pay.
It's cleared away.
Without pay. But that was.
That's the negative side.
Okay, so then we will stand adjourned here at 10:16. We convene next Tuesday, May 27th, virtually for members, for everyone, 9 a.m. Thank you.
Or you could do a fence like that where it's like right on the
Like, you're-
property line.
Yeah, you just went off.